this moment, Ning Jen is kneeling in front of his birth mother, Su Fei, asking her to relay a message to Sunan. If Sunan is willing to spare Shen Lang, he promises on behalf of Shen Lang that he will never set foot in capital city again. As soon as he said this, Su Fei's face immediately darkened. Ning Jen, this time it's Shen Lang who has provoked the sovereign himself. What does this have to do with the Su family? And what's this about letting your uncle spare him? Beside him, Ning Jing also chimed in, fifth brother, you really are betraying your own family. Su Marquis is our uncle, and Shen Lang is just a lowly son-in-law. Do you really think the Jin family would rebel for such a stray dog? Now that the mythical turtle Marquis has been theft, Shen Lang is naturally useless. I guess after he dies, you'll be the only one crying for him. Hearing this, Ning Jin clenched his teeth and trembled as he asked, Mother, can you really not show any mercy? Su Fei ignored him and shouted outside, someone, throw this ominous thing out. From now on, he is not allowed to set foot in this palace. As he was thrown out like trash, Ning Jin completely gave up on so-called kinship. He stood up, wiped the blood from his face, but his eyes were filled with endless sorrow and rage. Although he was acting on Shen Lang's instructions, he was still not content to remain a useless person forever. He directly went to the palace of Sovereign's most favored concubine, Bian Fei. Ning Jing thought, as the daughter of the Duke of Xiaoxiao, the head of the Yu Kingdom's Ministry of War, Bian Fei would not be as heartless as his own mother. At that moment, he knelt down and earnestly pleaded, Bian mother concubine, I know you are father's most favored concubine now. I came here to ask you to help Shen Lang. While the father is not in capital city, some people want to take this opportunity to frame Shen Lang and use the Blackwater platform to torture him. Aunt Ning Jia once held a significant position at Blackwater platform, and as long as she is willing to intervene, no one will dare to touch Shen Lang. Bian mother concubine, please contact Aunt Ning Jia and ask her to intervene. Bian Fei shook her head helplessly and said, Ning Jing, I'm sorry. I really wanted to help, but this punishment was personally decreed by His Majesty. Moreover, the harem must not interfere in politics. It's an iron rule, so I have no way to help. Hearing this response, Ning Zhang's eyes immediately lost all hope. He slowly bowed down. I've overstepped and troubled you, mother concubine. In that case, I'll take my leave. After saying this, he got up and walked out of the harem in a daze. At that moment, his heart felt as if it was covered with frost, cold and despair intertwining. Am I, Ning Zheng, really such a useless waste? Meanwhile, in the Court of Judicial Review prison, Shen Lang and Yan Wei, the leader of 1,000 households at Blackwater platform, were engaged in a verbal duel. Yan Wei glared fiercely at Shen Lang and said, Shen Lang, don't think that by coming to the Court of Judicial Review, we have no way to deal with you. Here at Blackwater platform, we still have the right to execute. We have hundreds of tortures, each day a different one to torment you. Rest assured, since you dared to offend us, the Xue family, we will repay you well, letting you experience what it means to neither live nor die. After saying this, his expression darkened, and he shouted sternly, How dare you, Shen Lang? You deceive your superiors and frame the sovereign's concubines, trying to incite factional strife in the court. Such serious crimes, you better confess honestly. If you don't tell the truth, then we'll have to use severe torture on you. A warrior immediately handed Yan Wei a red-hot iron. Then, Yan Wei took the iron, approached Shen Lang's ear, and arrogantly said, Tell me, this scorching hot iron, if it were branded on your pretty little face, wouldn't it look good? Shen Lang looked at him and sneered, I was personally sent here by the sovereign. Without the sovereign's command, do you dare to touch me? Oh, right, you can't touch me, because if you hurt even a single hair on me, you and your family will be struck by divine punishment. Your family of 15 and your 8 concubines will all perish. Suddenly, Shen Lang paused, then loudly said, Yan Wei, half of your family is already dead. If you dare, touch me and see if heaven will completely exterminate your lineage. Shen Lang was not lying. On the night Yan Wei captured him, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared over his family's estate, striking it directly. Amidst the neighbors' shock, the entire estate suddenly burst into flames. However, the fire was extremely strange, displaying a ghostly green color, and no matter how much water was poured, it could not be extinguished. The Yan family had done too many evil deeds, relying on Yan Wei's position at Blackwater platform to bully others mercilessly. Thinking of the scene of the lightning strike, the neighbors stopped trying to extinguish the fire and dispersed, discussing among themselves, this family has done so many evil deeds, it must be a vengeful ghost coming for them. They've done so many bad things, even heaven can't stand it anymore. The earlier lightning strike seemed like divine punishment, bringing total disaster upon the Yan family. The scene returns to the prison, where Yan Wei is still mocking Shen Lang, facing death, and still putting on airs. This is capital city. I don't believe your people would dare to openly commit murder. Suddenly, a guard rushed in frantically, Lord Yan, it's terrible. Your house was struck by lightning and caught fire. The blaze is too big. None of your 15 family members survived. Upon hearing this, the warriors were shocked, and Yan Wei froze on the spot. Impossible. It can't be such a coincidence. It must be Shen Lang's people. It must be. Thinking this, he grabbed the guard and shouted angrily, Did someone intentionally start the fire? Was it Shen Lang's people who deliberately set it? The guard, frightened, waved his hands repeatedly. The Court of Judicial Review, Ping'an County, and the Central Governor's Office all went to investigate, and indeed no one set the fire. It was caused by the lightning strike. After hearing this, Yan Wei let go of the guard and rushed to Shen Lang, demanding, "What exactly did you do? Even if the fire started at night, it's impossible that none of the dozen people in the house noticed, and even more impossible that not one of them could escape." Shen Lang shrugged his shoulders and smiled. "What does it have to do with me? Isn't this because your Yan family has committed so many evils that you've brought this divine punishment upon yourselves?" Enraged, Yan Wei grabbed a whip and lashed it fiercely across Shen Lang's body. A bloody whip mark immediately appeared. The sudden severe pain made Shen Lang gasp, but even then, despite the intense pain, he did not cry out. After catching his breath, he coldly looked at Yan Wei, his gaze like looking at a dead man, cold and filled with killing intent. At this moment, Yan Wei was startled by his gaze, but still pointed at Shen Lang and shouted sternly, "How dare you glare at me with that look? Do you believe I'll burn out your eyes?" Just then, the guard continued to report, "Lord, we've already sent people to protect your other house, but your second wife and the two young masters went out this afternoon and haven't returned yet." Upon hearing this, Yan Wei completely panicked, his eyes fearful as he looked at Shen Lang. Shen Lang sneered, "Don't look at me, I don't know anything." However, Capital City is not very peaceful right now, and with Lord Yan's reputation so well known, someone will come asking for ransom in exchange soon. As soon as he finished speaking, another guard rushed in holding a small box. "Lord, a mysterious person has sent a box for you." Yan Wei took the box, hurriedly opened it, and immediately turned pale. Inside the box was a bloody woman's hand. From the ring on the hand, it was clearly the hand of his second wife. Besides, there was also a letter attached next to the bloody hand. The letter says, "Lord Yan, your wife once poisoned 5 merchant managers because they were in the same line of business as your family, and your 2 sons, at the age of 11, caused harm to a neighbor's daughter. I, Kutuhuan, act on heaven's behalf, temporarily taking your family. Please prepare 100 million gold coins for their ransom." After reading the letter, Yan Wei collapsed. He muttered, "Isn't Kutuhuan only active in the province of the Southern Journey? And that's 100 million gold coins. Even if the crown prince were kidnapped, the sovereign couldn't gather that much money." In desperation, he drew his sword and swung it toward Shen Lang. "It must be you. Speak, where have you hidden my sons?" However, Shen Lang calmly said, "What goes around comes around. You lashed me once, and you received your wife's hand. If you use the knife on me, perhaps your sons won't be safe either." Hearing this, Yan Wei weakly lowered his sword and stepped back, murmuring, "Shen Lang, calamity should not extend to one's family. My 2 sons are still young." Shen Lang sneered, "Young? Which of your family members isn't cruel and ruthless? And this Kutuhuan, though a major thief, never kills the innocent indiscriminately. Those he kills are deserving of death." Shen Lang continued sneering, "And you, my feud with Sunan has nothing to do with your Shui family. Haven't you noticed? Even the great governor of Blackwater Platform doesn't want to deal with my case personally to avoid being used. And you, fool, are being used by others without even realizing it." After hearing Shen Lang's words, Yan Wei's face turned ashen. Once he calmed down, he said, "Shen Lang, don't forget you have committed a crime of deceiving the emperor. Even if I don't punish you, others will." After saying this, he called out, "Let the Court of Judicial Review and the Imperial Censorate prepare to take Shen Lang to the Court of Judicial Review for a joint hearing." Shen Lang was escorted to the Court of Judicial Review to face trial. The grandeur of a tribunal of 3 officials was now before him. 3 officials sat high in the hall, with Wang Jingluan of the Court of Judicial Review presiding, Zhang Chong of the Imperial Censorate supervising, and Yan Wei, who despised Shen Lang, assisting. Shen Lang bowed to the 3 officials, but internally he couldn't help but feel this setup, usually reserved for the most serious cases. Now here I am, Shen Lang, experiencing it. Why do I feel a little excited? Then, Wang Jingluan shouted sternly, "How audacious, Shen Lang. You have no official position. Why do you not kneel before this official?" Zhang Chong reminded him, "Lord Wang, Shen Lang has only been stripped of his position as chief clerk of the Office of Reception, but he still holds the imperial degree of a recognized scholar bestowed by His Majesty." Wang Jingluan was taken aback and countered, "Shen Lang has committed a crime of deceiving the emperor. Shouldn't he be stripped of all his titles?" Zhang Chong gave him a cold glance and continued, "Shen Lang is currently only a suspect. Unless decreed by His Majesty, his scholarly title remains. In this court, he need not kneel." At this, Wang Jingluan was so infuriated he could grit his teeth. He had never expected that Zhang Chong, having just been released from prison, would dare to get involved in Shen Lang's case, let alone openly oppose him in court. However, Zhang Chong paid no attention to Wang Jingluan's murderous gaze. Never mind that he now stood with Shen Lang. His own harrowing experiences of humiliation and torture in the Court of Judicial Review's prison, almost costing him his life, were enough to make him an enemy of the Court of Judicial Review. Seeing Zhang Chong's aggressive stance, Wang Jingluan, with no other choice but to save face, reluctantly conceded and waived Shen Lang's need to kneel. But still furious, he slammed the gavel with a snap, then shouted loudly, "Shen Lang, you have deceived the emperor, framed the imperial concubines, slandered, and cursed the crown prince. You must confess all these misdeeds truthfully, otherwise, your entire family will be implicated." Before he could finish speaking, a Blackwater platform guard hurriedly ran in and reported, "3 lords, we have just captured 3 guards sneaking out from the Jin family's separate residence residence. We suspect these 3 were heading to inform the Marquis of Mythical Turtle. They then brought in 3 severely injured guards from the Jin family, the leader among them being Jinan, a trusted confidant of Jin Mutsong. From their injuries, it was evident they had been captured only after a fierce battle. Shen Lang, seeing their condition, couldn't help but sigh, feeling both moved and helpless. Originally, he had warned Jin Mutsong not to act rashly, no matter what happened, but this foolish boy ultimately couldn't restrain himself. At this point, Wang Jingluan looked at the 3 men and asked sternly, "Are you 3 Jin family guards, rushing back to Mythical Turtle City in such haste to report a rebellion to the Marquis of Mythical Turtle?" This accusatory question immediately angered the spirited Jinan. "Lord, do not falsely accuse us. We are indeed guards of the Jin family, but we were merely changing guard. Moreover, each change of guard involves bringing back family letters written by the heir to the Marquis to report their safety. You can check the content of the letters yourself if you don't believe it." Right after he finished speaking, a Blackwater platform guard presented the letters they had found. After reading the contents, Wang Jingluan frowned. It was indeed just an ordinary family letter. However, he did not want to let these men off easily, thinking to himself, who knows if this is just a cover, and they might have brought back other messages as well. With this thought, Wang Jingluan shouted again, "Bold servants, confess now. Why would you return just when Shen Lang was captured? Explain immediately. Who instructed you to return to Mythical Turtle City to send messages?" By this point, Shen Lang fully understood. These people not only wanted to kill him, but also to use the Jin Mutsong incident to drag the Jin family down, making the suspicious sovereign believe that the Jin family was plotting a rebellion. Then, Wang Jingluan threw down a punishment tablet and said coldly, "What stubborn criminals. It seems without severe torture, you won't speak." Seeing this, Shen Lang stood up and said, "Lord Wang, I am here by imperial decree for a trial. The emperor's envoy hasn't arrived yet, and you want to torture me? Aren't you afraid of the emperor's punishment?" At this, Wang Jingluan became furious and shouted, "Shen Lang, are you saying I'm not qualified to judge you? Do you really think I dare not torture you?" Zhang Chong then spoke up slowly again, "Lord Wang, Shen Lang holds a scholar's degree. Indeed, you cannot torture him." Hearing this, Wang Jingluan was almost bursting with rage. "Fine, fine. In that case, I will immediately petition the emperor to strip Shen Lang of all his titles." Zhang Chong said calmly, "Let's petition together. I will inform His Majesty of Shen Lang's exact words." Yan Wei, seeing this, grew even more somber and interjected through gritted teeth, "I'll join too. After I captured Shen Lang, my family members mysteriously died. I want to see how, under the sovereign's feet, Shen Lang's blatant killing will be handled by His Majesty." Moments later, 3 memorials were swiftly written and sent north by trusted guards at full speed. Back in the courtroom, Wang Jingluan was not willing to let the matter rest. He coldly said to Zhang Chong, "Lord Zhang, since we cannot torture Shen Lang, surely we can torture his family's servants." After saying this, he slammed the gavel and commanded loudly, "Bring someone. Torture the Jin family guards until they confess the truth." At this, Yan Wei was inwardly overjoyed. "Shen Lang, you've really kicked an iron plate this time." Wang Jingluan is a key member of the Sue family, and his family members have already been sent out of Capital City for protection by Sunan. I'm curious to see how furious His Majesty will be when he learns you killed the family of a Blackwater platform leader of 1,000 households. However, just then, a court bailiff hurried in and urgently reported, "My lord, it's bad. There are people outside attempting a jailbreak. They are here for Shen Lang." Upon hearing this, the 3 on the stand all turned their gaze to Shen Lang. Shen Lang looked perplexed and thought to himself, "Didn't I say not to make any moves? Who is this troublemaker stirring things up now?" But for Wang Jingluan, this was an opportunity sent from heaven. A cold smile appeared on his face. Back when the Count of East River led troops to attack the Lord's residence of East River City, he was seen as committing treason and was ultimately executed along with his entire family. Now, Shen Lang daring to send people to attack the Court of Judicial Review and orchestrate a jailbreak, wasn't this just sealing the charge of rebellion against the Jin family? Thinking this, Wang Jingluan immediately ordered, "Someone go quickly to the Central Governor's office and the Privy Council to report this matter. Have them dispatch troops immediately to eradicate the rebels." However, just then, a commanding female voice echoed in, "I am 3rd Princess Ning Jen. There is a miscarriage of justice in the Court of Judicial Review, and I have come to oversee it. Whoever dares to stop me, I will kill without mercy." Hearing this voice, Wang Jingluan and Yan Wei were instantly stunned. Why is it the calamitous 3rd Princess who has come to break into the jail? How can this be allowed? Even the usually composed Zhang Chong couldn't help but internally exclaim, "Young Master Shen, wherever you go, trouble follows. Even the 3rd Princess has come to break you out of jail. If the sovereign finds out, see how you handle that." Shen Lang at this moment was also speechless. This fierce woman has actually gone mad enough to attack the Court of Judicial Review? Meanwhile, the sovereign on his way back was not at peace either. Dozens of memorials continuously arrived in his hands from Capital City. As he was suppressing his anger, reading the memorials and contemplating, when he saw Yan Wei's memorial, learning that 18 members of the Yan family had been killed by a scheme orchestrated by Shen Lang, Sovereign Ning Yuanxian was furious. Seeing Yan Wei's memorial, he was filled with towering rage. "The Blackwater platform is my tool. Ning Yuan Xian's hound. Where does Shen Lang get the audacity to strike at people of the Blackwater platform? Then, he read the memorial from Wang Jingluan, the minor prefect of the Court of Judicial Review, which accused Jin family warriors of sneaking back to mythical Turtle City to communicate during Shen Lang's capture, even suspecting them of harboring rebellious intentions. The memorial also explicitly mentioned Third Princess Ning Jen and Imperial Envoy Yun Mengzi coming to break into the jail. Upon seeing this, Ning Yuanxian was unable to contain his fury and slammed his hand down, bellowing, "Shen Lang, have you gone mad? How dare you involve my daughter and the Imperial Envoy? Relying on the backing of the Jin family, you act so arrogantly. Do you really think I won't have you killed?" The more he thought about it, the angrier he got, preparing to order Shen Lang's execution when Li Ji cautiously presented another memorial. "Your Majesty, this last memorial is from Lord Zhang. Perhaps you should read it before making a decision." Hearing Zhang Chang's name, Ning Yuanxian paused, then as if realizing something, took the memorial. When he finished reading the contents, his expression instantly cooled. The memorial did not mention Shen Lang's situation, but detailed issues with the Su family's trade operations. It stated that the Su family not only subsidized the Chang nation with over 40,000 gold coins annually, but also maintained a large private army and extensively bribed officials in the Western Celestial Province. Even though the Su family lands included mines, they couldn't possibly fund such vast expenses. Sunan had secretly nurtured a group of bandits known as the Three-Eyed Evil to carry out his dark deeds. They captured citizens of Yu Kingdom to sell as slaves to the Chang nation, thereby acquiring vast wealth. Moreover, Sunan monopolized the smuggling trade with Chu. At present, more than half of the Great Yu army was confronting Chu, yet Sunan was engaging in extensive smuggling with Chu through collusion with the Chang, earning massive amounts of gold. The minister suspected that the dealings between the Su family and Chu involved more than just smuggling, likely deeper transactions as well. At this time, Sovereign Ning Yuanxian, holding Zhang Chang's memorial, calmed down. Eunuchly at his side couldn't help but admire Zhang Chang's intelligence. Without directly defending Shen Lang, he managed to bring out a bigger issue at a crucial moment, not only quelling the sovereign's fury towards Shen Lang, but also striking a fatal blow to his opponents. Truly remarkable. At that moment, the sovereign suddenly spoke up. "Among these dozens of memorials that have been sent, is there any mention of Sunan? Have you heard of the bandit group Three-Eyed Evil? Has anyone reported about this organization?" Li Ji nodded slightly and said, "Sir, Su is currently recuperating at home, and I have indeed heard of the Three-Eyed Evil. However, the bureaucrats of the Western Celestial Province have never reported on this matter." Hearing Li Ji's response, the sovereign continued flipping through the memorials. Suddenly, he saw on the last page, Shen Lang refuses to confess, claiming he will only reveal everything if personally interrogated by a trusted official of the sovereign. Seeing this, the sovereign scoffed and then ordered Li Ji, "You go and interrogate Shen Lang." After speaking, the sovereign turned to the carriage outside and said to the third prince, "Ning Qi, you go with Li Ji. During the interrogation, you just need to watch." Li Ji, hearing the sovereign's arrangement, immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He thought to himself, everyone knows the sovereign is suspicious by nature. Sending the third prince with me this time probably means he suspects I might go easy on Shen Lang. The sovereign continued, "Take my verbal order. If Shen Lang stubbornly refuses to confess, then strip him of all his titles. He is physically weak and cannot withstand punishment. Without his titles, he will tell us everything. If he truly has committed the crime of deceiving the emperor, then do not blame me for being ruthless. He must be executed on the spot." An hour later, Li Ji arrived at the Court of Judicial Review and, along with the three officials, went to the torture chamber to start interrogating Shen Lang. Once everyone was seated, Li Ji asked, "Shen Lang, on the night of the Empress Dowager's birthday, the song 'When Will the Moon Be Clear and Bright' sung by Lady He, was it you who arranged for it to be sold to her?" Shen Lang nodded and answered, "Yes." Li Ji was shocked. "Why would you admit to such a crucial question? Even if I wanted to save you now, I couldn't." Reluctantly, he continued, "Was the dress Lady He wore that night also sold to her by you? Additionally, the court painter says someone from the Jin family gave him money to embellish Lady He's portrait to catch the emperor's eye. Did you arrange for this to happen?" Shen Lang waved his hands in denial and said, "Of course I didn't do those things. I only write poetry. I don't do needlework, and bribing court painters is even less likely. This is a blatant frame-up." Li Ji then asked, "What about the handkerchief stained with menstrual blood found in Li Wenjing's house, and the effigy used to curse the crown prince found under the bed? Did you arrange for those to be planted?" Shen Lang still shook his head and said, "I have nothing to do with this." At this point, Li Ji was also getting annoyed and pressed further, "If it has nothing to do with you, then why did Lady He come to see you late at night at the Lang Jun Inn? What was the matter about?" Shen Lang replied innocently, "That night, she came to ask if I was the one who sold her the poem 'When Will the Moon Be Clear and Bright?' But I didn't want to get involved, so I denied it and sent her away. As for her death, it truly has nothing to do with me." After hearing this, Li Ji sighed internally. "If it really had nothing to do with you, you shouldn't have admitted anything at the start. Now all the evidence is pointing at you, and this crime is not easy to wash away." At that moment, Wang Jingluan couldn't help but interject, "Eunuchly, since Shen Lang's titles have been stripped and he still refuses to confess honestly, isn't it time to apply torture torture? Just then, Zhang Chong suddenly spoke up. Uniquely, when Lady He's body was brought in earlier, I discovered some new clues. It's very likely she was not a suicide but a murder. After saying this, Zhang Chong's gaze casually swept over Shen Lang. This seemingly inadvertent look was caught by Li Ji, who thought to himself, no wonder this young man is so confident, he must have a backup plan. Upon hearing Zhang Chong's words, Yan Wei's expression changed dramatically, and he hurriedly said, Lord Zhang, do not make unfounded accusations. Lady He could not possibly have been murdered. Li Ji immediately sensed Yan Wei's nervousness and asked, Lord Yan, why are you so certain that it was not a murder? Yan Wei steadied himself and answered, we had dispatched a group of more than 20 people to protect Lady He. Even when she was sleeping or using the restroom, female guards were closely following her without leaving her side. That day, after she returned from seeing Shen Lang, she didn't even eat dinner, just drank some rice wine, and then went alone to her study to write a letter to the sovereign. After handing the letter to the guarding servant, she went to sleep. During this time, our security was tight. Not even a fly could have gotten in. Shen Lang interrupted, if you guarded her so closely, then how did she manage to visit me alone at the official hostel that day? Yan Wei explained, that was because your people only allowed Lady He to enter alone. We could only wait outside. Li Ji, ignoring Shen Lang, continued to question Yan Wei. You repeatedly say you were with her every step of the way, so how did she manage to commit suicide? Yan Wei calmly replied, Lady He committed suicide by poisoning herself with cinnabar, which is a highly toxic substance. Li Ji was shocked to hear this. Cinnabar? Isn't that the highly poisonous arsenic? With this thought, he immediately sent someone back to the palace to request a female physician to come and perform an autopsy. Seeing this, Wang Jingluan couldn't help but ask, what about stripping Shen Lang of his titles? Is that still? Li Ji cut him off before he could finish. That's not urgent. If Lady He was indeed murdered, then we have 2 cases to deal with. For now, let's proceed with the trial of Shen Lang for deceiving the emperor. Moments later, the tribunal resumed with the addition of the 3rd prince and Li Ji overseeing. Wang Jingluan sternly asked, Shen Lang, since you have admitted that the poem When Will the Moon Be Clear and Bright was written by you, why did you sell it to Lady He? Shen Lang smiled and said, it was of course to woo Lady He and also to get revenge on Li Wenjing. Upon hearing this, Wang Jingluan was overjoyed and slammed the gavel, exclaiming, Shen Lang, you finally admit that you framed Lady He. Then how did you manage to hide the doll used to curse the crown prince under Li Wenjing's bed? Shen Lang shook his head and said calmly, Lord Wang, it seems you have misunderstood my words. By wooing, I meant flirting, because Lady He was very beautiful and I couldn't resist. The revenge on Li Wenjing was because I knew how much he admired her. The reason I sold the poem through other means was also a strategy to win her affection and simultaneously infuriate Li Wenjing to the point of vomiting blood. Upon hearing this, everyone in the courtroom was stunned. Li Ji did not expect Shen Lang to use such a shameless excuse to cover up the matter. Reacting, Wang Jingluan furiously slammed the gavel and roared, Shen Lang, it is clear that you used Lady He to kill Li Wenjing and even cursed the crown prince. Are you still trying to deny it? Shen Lang said aggrievedly, Lord Wang, you must not falsely accuse me. I admit I was fond of Lady He initially, but at that time the sovereign and Lady He were not acquainted. Also, you said I wanted to kill Li Wenjing, then what would my motive be? Wang Jingluan, now frantic, pointed at Shen Lang and said, because at Zhang Ji's engagement party, Li Wenjing accused you of rebellion and tried to doom you with an acrostic poem, so you held a grudge and wanted to kill him. Shen Lang chuckled lightly and retorted, you were right, but didn't I already get my revenge on him on the spot? When noble Lord Jin of Southern Ouyang conspired to rebel and Li Wenjing admitted on the spot to colluding with noble Lord Jin, I thought he was as good as dead then. Why would I need to go to the trouble of using Lady He to kill him? Upon hearing this, Wang Jingluan fell completely silent. Shen Lang was too cunning in his argumentation. His reasons were flawless and left no room for rebuttal. After a moment of silence, Eunuch cleared his throat and said, well then, let's all wait for the autopsy results to come out. At this moment, only Yan Wei appeared to be taking pleasure in the misfortune, thinking to himself, Shen Lang, you're done for. No matter how they investigate, Lady He simply committed suicide. It couldn't have been murder. Just wait here for your death. In the courtroom of the Court of Judicial Review, everyone anxiously awaited the autopsy results. 2/4 of an hour later, the female physicians returned to the courtroom, pushing Lady He's body. The lead female physician stepped forward and bowed, saying, my lords, after our examination, we confirm without a doubt that Lady He committed suicide. Hearing this, Ning Jen jumped up anxiously. Shen Lang's deductions are never wrong. How could she possibly have committed suicide? Even the usually calm Eunuch could no longer sit still. Everyone, this case is of great importance. Please ensure a thorough check. The female physician respectfully answered, Eunuch, the deceased had a metallic smell in her body, severe corrosion in her esophagus, and clear signs of burning and congestion in her anus. These are all typical symptoms of arsenic poisoning. No external injuries were found on the body, nor any signs of struggle. At this point, Yan Wei continued with a tone as if watching a drama unfold. We have checked repeatedly, from writing her suicide note to drinking the poison tea. All were actions taken by Lady He herself. Afterwards, she even wore the dress she first wore when meeting the sovereign and lay down calmly on her bed to await death. The intent intent to commit suicide is very clear. After hearing this, Li Ji turned to Ning Jia and asked, "Princess, what is your view?" Ning Jia calmly responded, "I supervised the entire autopsy process, and the final results are indeed as the physician described, with no falsehood." Upon hearing this, Ning Yan's face changed drastically, and the next second, tears welled up. "And, do you realize what you are saying? Your words are sentencing Shen Lang to death." At this moment, Wang Jinglin, barely containing his inner joy, shouted authoritatively, "Lady, he revealed your conspiracy in her suicide note, preferring death to prove her innocence. The evidence is irrefutable. What more do you have to say?" After saying this, he provocatively looked towards Zhang Chong and continued, "Lord Zhang, you insist it was murder when it is clear she committed suicide. Could it be that you are colluding with Shen Lang? Your Highness, uniquely, I believe that Imperial Censorate Right Minister Zhang Chong is no longer qualified to oversee this tribunal. He has repeatedly protected the suspect Shen Lang with impure motives and should be taken back to the Court of Judicial Review prison for strict questioning." Hearing this, Li Ji tensed, but remained calm and asked, "Lord Zhang, you are not a physician, so why are you so sure it was murder and not suicide?" Zhang Chong calmly replied, "May I ask the lords, do you know what symptoms occur when a person ingests arsenic?" Hearing the question, Wang Jinglin and Yan Wei were taken aback. Zhang Chong did not wait for their reaction and continued, "After ingesting arsenic, the entire stomach and esophagus are burned and corroded, the process akin to enduring severe torture, unbearably painful. Yet Lady He, a frail woman, died a peaceful death, as if she felt no pain at all. If not for the filth under her body, one would think she was merely asleep. Doesn't that strike you as odd?" Upon hearing this, even the female physician stepped forward to acknowledge Zhang Chong's analysis. This move greatly annoyed Wang Jinglin, but Zhang Chong simply ignored his angry glare and turned to Ning Jia to ask, "Your Highness, is there a poison that can cause one to lose all consciousness after ingestion?" After thinking for a moment, Ning Jia answered, "The soul-dissipating powder from Floating Mountain." Hearing Ning Jia's response, Wang Jinglin exclaimed excitedly, "Lady, he was a delicate and beauty-loving woman. It's perfectly normal for her to want a peaceful death by adding soul-dissipating powder to her tea to maintain her composure before death, isn't it?" Shen Lang chuckled coldly and said, "That's not normal at all. If she wanted to die peacefully, 2 drops of soul-dissipating powder would have been enough. Why then would she also take arsenic? Why perform such a redundant act?" Zhang Chong didn't pay attention to the two of them but continued to ask, "Your Highness, is this soul-dissipating powder easily obtainable?" Ning Jia shook her head. "It's a rare poison from Floating Mountain, not accessible to ordinary people." Zhang Chong nodded understandingly. Since Lady He was essentially under house arrest, it would be even less likely for her to acquire such poison. That means someone must have poisoned her. This conclusion instantly caused Wang Jinglin and Yan Wei to look flustered. Wang Jinglin rebuked Zhang Chong, "You're merely speculating that Lady He ingested soul-dissipating powder. There's no concrete evidence." Yan Wei chimed in, "Blackwater Platform has already tested it. The teacup only contained arsenic, no traces of soul-dissipating powder." At this point, Ning Jia stepped in to explain, "Soul-dissipating powder is an extremely volatile liquid that can completely evaporate within an hour once exposed to air." Zhang Chong turned to Li Ji and asked, "Uniquely, may I take a look at Lady He's suicide note?" Li Ji fumbled in his inner pocket, appearing hesitant. After all, it was Lady He's suicide note, and it was not appropriate to allow an outsider to view it. However, after a moment of thought, he decided to help Shen Lang and handed the note to Zhang Chong, though he also didn't understand why he felt compelled to help this young man. Zhang Chong quickly skimmed the suicide note and was suddenly startled. Then he asked Li Ji, "Lady He wrote in her letter, 'If possible, let His Majesty cut open my abdomen to see what color my heart is.' Could this sentence be implying something?" Li Ji shook his head and said, "Lady He always wrote such phrases to please His Majesty. I never felt there was anything unusual about it." However, Zhang Chong pointed to a part of the suicide note and said, "Look here, this sentence seems to have been scratched forcefully with a fingernail, and there's a red mark on it. Could this be a clue she left us?" Li Ji was taken aback and quickly took the note to check, indeed seeing a colored nail mark on it. At this point, everyone's gaze shifted to Lady He's body, wondering if she had been coerced and left evidence inside her body. After a moment of thought, Li Ji said, "The matter of checking the abdomen must be decided by His Majesty. I can't make that decision. Please wait here, my lords, while I go and report to His Majesty." After saying this, he quickly ran outside. Shen Lang watched Li Ji's departing figure, deeply moved. He did not know why Li Ji was so earnestly helping him, but he, Shen Lang, would remember this kindness. After sprinting for dozens of miles, Li Ji finally reached the sovereign's carriage. Without bothering with formalities, he rushed into the carriage and anxiously said, "Your Majesty, I have urgent news to report." The sovereign, who had just fallen asleep, was suddenly awakened, but seeing Li Ji's anxious appearance, he did not reprimand him and instead sat up and asked, "Has Shen Lang confessed truthfully?" Li Ji quickly knelt down and reported the entire trial process truthfully. Then, Li Ji took out the suicide note and said, "Your Majesty, I have carefully checked it, and indeed there are nail marks on the words 'cut open my abdomen,' and the vermilion color is the one exclusively used by Lady He. However, the matter of cutting open the abdomen is too serious for me to decide on my own. I implore your majesty to make the decision. Upon hearing this, Ning Jen picked up the suicide note and examined it carefully under the sunlight. Indeed, finding the nail marks, he thought to himself, it seems I was careless, but is this a hint or just a coincidence? If it is indeed a hint, that would mean the suicide note was written under duress. Could someone be using this to influence my decision? Thinking this, he asked Li Ji, tell me again, why did Shen Lang sell the poem to Lady He? Li Ji replied, Shen Lang clearly stated that he did it to take revenge on Lin Jong, hence he used the poem to get close to Lady He. However, from what I know, Shen Lang is indeed a frivolous person, utterly shameless. After hearing this, the sovereign fell silent again. The dead should be buried in peace, and their bodies should not be easily disturbed. Yet, what he cared about most was whether Shen Lang had indeed deceived him. After a moment of contemplation, he finally decreed, issue my order, perform the autopsy. Let's see what is truly inside Lady He's abdomen. Upon receiving the order, Li Ji immediately prepared to rush back to the Court of Judicial Review, but suddenly the sovereign called out from behind, why are you helping Shen Lang so much? Startled, Li Ji quickly knelt on the ground and replied, I have not intentionally helped him, my lord. I merely do not wish for certain malevolent individuals to exploit matters concerning your majesty. The sovereign chuckled and said, old fellow, it seems you have also noticed something. Go and complete what you must. 2 hours later, Li Ji hurried back to the Court of Judicial Review and announced loudly, His Majesty decrees, perform the autopsy immediately, investigate thoroughly. Due to the grisly nature of the procedure, it was not displayed in the public court. Moments later, a female physician rushed out carrying a silver basin, excitedly saying, there is a foreign object. There is indeed a foreign object in the body's stomach. Everyone looked and saw that the silver basin contained a wax pill. Wang Jingluan and Yen Wei, hearing this result, their faces changed dramatically, murmuring, that's not right. Why would there be a wax pill in Lady He's stomach? Li Ji stepped forward, picked up the wax pill, and held it up for everyone to see, saying, my lords, allow me to reveal the answer to you all. Meanwhile, at the distant guard marquis's residence, none of this news had reached here even slightly. At this moment, Sunan calmly sat in the hall, reconfirming with Sue Jianting, has the scene of Lady He's suicide been properly arranged? Sue Jianting nodded and smiled, father, rest assured, that foolish woman wrote her suicide note in front of me, and she drank that cup of tea herself. Afterwards, I made sure all traces of my presence were cleaned up. There will be no clues left behind. It turns out, days before, Lady He, wanting to retaliate against Shen Lang for his framing of her and to regain the sovereign's favor, chose to cooperate with the Sue family, and that cup of tea containing arsenic was given to her by Sue Jianting. However, at the time, Sue Jianting told her that the cup only contained soul-dissipating powder, which would induce a state of suspended animation. He also said that once the sovereign heard of her death and came to her, a royal physician would be arranged to revive her. After she regained the sovereign's favor, the Sue family planned to rely on her to help balance the influences of other consorts, and that foolish woman actually fell for it, writing down her will and drinking the poison tea, thus ending her life. At this moment, Sue Jianting laughed gleefully, Lady He's death, no matter who investigates it, will only be deemed a suicide. Shen Lang is doomed this time. That fool, to go to such lengths to kill Lin Jong, has left us such a significant loophole. Sunan nodded and sneered, our sovereign has always been selfish and stingy. Since he values Shen Lang so much, he will definitely not tolerate any betrayal from him. Even being drawn and quartered might not quell the sovereign's wrath. At this point, Sunan's confidant Suyong spoke up, Master, if the sovereign executes Shen Lang, would the Jin family consider rebelling? Would the sovereign hesitate to kill Shen Lang to avoid provoking them? After thinking for a moment, Sunan sneered, considering the Jin family, Ning Jen might convict Shen Lang but still not kill him. However, he won't let Shen Lang off easily. He might sentence him to castration. But here, Shen Lang must die. As long as he lives, he remains a significant threat. He then commanded sternly, send 2 groups, one to Wu country and the other to keep a close watch on Shen Lang. We must be thoroughly prepared. Suyong immediately accepted the order. Rest assured, Master, castrating cattle and sheep can be lethal, let alone a human. I will ensure that Shen Lang suffers from festering wounds and dies a miserable death. Back to the Court of Judicial Review courtroom. At this moment, Li Ji, holding the wax pill, decided to open it in public and reveal its secrets. As he carefully opened the wax pill, it indeed contained a scrap of sheepskin. Unfolding it, it read, Sue Jianting framed me, forced me to falsely accuse Shen Lang. When Li Ji read out the content on the paper, the entire room was shocked, and the female physician was also stunned. She hurriedly explained, uniquely, there were no signs of violation found on Lady He during the examination. Li Ji angrily commanded, go check again, thoroughly, do not miss any details. A while later, the female physician hurried back to the courtroom, reporting, my lords, indeed there are signs of tearing in Lady He's posterior. Initially, we thought it was due to arsenic burns, so we didn't examine it carefully before. Hearing the female physician's conclusion, Wang Jingluan and Yen Wei were utterly shocked. Has Sue Jianting gone mad? What woman does he lack that he would dare touch the sovereign's woman? However, at this moment, a barely noticeable smile appeared on Shen Lang's face, because only he knew that the real orchestrator orchestrator behind all this was his aunt, the Grandmaster Shuayin. My holy aunt, you really are capable of anything. It turns out, after Lady He drank the poison tea, Shuayin had used her skills to stealthily enter her room and fed her the wax pill that Shen Lang had given her beforehand. Even the note inside the wax pill was written by Shen Lang, imitating Lady He's handwriting. As for the tears in Lady He's posterior, that was purely Shuayin's own improvisation, unrelated to the overall plan. It was Shen Lang who had sent out Shuayin, and he had come up with this poisonous plan because of a phrase in Lady He's letter. If possible, let His Majesty cut open my concubine's abdomen to see the color of my heart. This phrase was a tactic frequently used by Lady He before she became the sovereign's favorite concubine, often employed to gain sympathy and attention from powerful men she met privately. At this moment, even the onlooking Yunlingza had to admire Shen Lang's cunning. He thought everyone knew about Lady He's background before she became the sovereign's woman, and I too was somewhat aware. Yet no one dared speak of it once she became his woman. I didn't expect Shen Lang to dare make a move. Beside him, Ning Jen looked completely baffled and asked, what exactly is going on? Just moments ago Shen Lang was undoubtedly doomed, so how had the situation reversed so quickly, with all the blame now falling on the Sue family? Yan Wei, unable to contain his inner panic and agitation, shouted, this is impossible. This must be a conspiracy by Shen Lang. Prince Sue Jianting would never violate Lady He. As soon as these words were out, Li Ji immediately seized on the point, his gaze turning toward Yan Wei. This young man knows too much. He must also be deeply involved with the Sue family. Realizing his slip, Yan Wei quickly covered his mouth, but it was too late. Yunmingza gave him a pitying look, thinking to himself, idiot, this idiot is done for. Then, Li Ji cleared his throat and said, my lords, this case has become overly complicated, and the true nature of it is still hard to determine. I will set off to report this matter to His Majesty. If any rumors of today's events spread outside, all present here may not escape involvement. After giving everyone a meaningful look, he hurriedly left. An hour later, Li Ji presented the physical evidence to the sovereign. Your Majesty, this is the item extracted from Lady He's abdomen. Ning Yuanxian took the paper, and upon seeing the contents, his veins bulged with anger. Sue Jianting dared to defile her. Seeing this reaction, Li Ji quickly recounted everything that had transpired in the courtroom to the sovereign. Unexpectedly, Ning Yuanxian did not become angry after hearing this, but instead burst out laughing. The carriage was filled with a murderous aura, and Li Ji felt a chill run through his body, scaring him into kneeling with a thud. The next second, the sovereign's eyes turned bloodshot as he muttered to himself, very good, Sue Jianting, you dare to touch my woman? It seems the Sue family's ambitions are growing. Ning Yuanxian sneered and said, with this, everything makes sense. The doll found under Li Wenjing's bed, which cursed the crown prince, must have been Sunan's scheme to frame Shen Lang. If the crown prince and the third prince were to engage in factional conflict, who would benefit? Certainly, it would be Sunan from the neutral faction, and Shen Lang, just a minor son-in-law, would gain nothing from their conflict. He'd be foolish to get involved in the affairs between the crown prince and the third prince. He paused and then continued, as for him selling poems to Lady He, given his cynical nature, it might really have just been to get revenge on Li Wenjing. But is it possible that all this was orchestrated by Shen Lang? Li Ji hurriedly responded, Shen Lang has been tortured in the court of judicial review and likely has nothing to hide. However, when the wax pill was extracted, Blackwater platform leader of 1,000 households Yan Wei said something odd. He claimed that all this was Shen Lang's conspiracy and that Prince Sue Jianting could not possibly have violated Lady He. After hearing this, the sovereign closed his eyes to ponder for a while, then murmured, it seems Yan Wei was prepared for Lady He's death, but his reaction to Sue Jianting's actions was somewhat excessive. It appears the Blackwater platform has long been colluding with the Sue family. He slowly opened his eyes, his gaze sharp yet his tone mild. However, for some reason, the sovereign now feels relieved thinking that Shen Lang did not betray him, but became a victim instead. Then, he spoke to Li Ji, let this case rest here. Have Yan Wei's family died out yet? He still has a family of 5 outside. The sovereign then coldly ordered, go, execute them all. Furthermore, interrogate Yan Wei severely to find out how he colluded with the Sue family and to what extent the Blackwater platform has been infiltrated. Afterward, flay his skin and hang it on the Blackwater platform's flagpole as a warning. He continued, and that Sue Jianting, who previously led Western soldiers to attack the mythical Turtle Count's mansion, he dared to attack the mansion of a court count, and even tried to kill his own aunt. Such bold and insane behavior. Li Ji thought to himself, you've known about this for a while, and now you bring it up again. But he only dared to complain in his mind, not showing any sign of it outwardly. Then, the sovereign shouted outside, someone, arrest Sue Jianting. I want to see what he intends to do, daring even to kill his own aunt. Once everything was arranged, the sovereign looked at Li Ji, who was still kneeling on the ground, and asked, what's the situation with Shen Lang and Ning Jen? Li Ji was startled, not daring to discuss the princess's private matters, and could only bow his head and reply, this servant does not know. The sovereign snorted lightly, that young man is frivolous and promiscuous, already married, yet he still flirts around. If he hadn't actively pursued Lady He, how could today's events have unfolded? Hearing this, Li Ji quickly agreed, Your Majesty is right. That young man is undisciplined and scandalous. scandalous. The sovereign hummed again, and then Li Ji recounted the interesting incident of Shen Lang dressing up to visit a brothel. He narrated how Shen Lang couldn't overcome his own reservations and was accidentally discovered by Ning Jen, who then exposed his identity, describing the entire sequence clearly. When the sovereign heard that Shen Lang had been labeled as inadequate in that regard in the capital city after that incident, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Seeing this, Li Ji also breathed a sigh of relief. It seems Shen Lang is finally clear of all charges. After laughing, Sovereign gradually became contemplative. We can only make Sunan hesitant to act, but it's impossible to take him down directly with this case. Before the great battle of Southern Ouyang concludes, I cannot move against Sunan. This old fox has too strong a hold in the court. His wife and several brothers command the winds and rain in distant Guard City, holding significant power, and they support each other from afar, making it difficult to capture them all at once. Now, if we are to deal with the Sue family, we can only start by clipping its wings. The governor of Western Celestial Province must be replaced, and the prefect of Night County as well. It will take 2 to 3 years of boiling the frog in warm water, gradually encircling the Sue family's territory, weakening their power in the court, and finally taking them down completely. Thinking this, Sovereign couldn't help feeling exhausted and weary. If not for that damned bandit, the Chong King, would Sunan, this old fox, be so difficult to handle? At this moment, in the torture chamber of the Court of Judicial Review, cries of agony continued. The former Blackwater platform leader of 1,000 households, Yan Wei, was hanging on the wall, receiving brutal flogging, and the executor was his fellow brother Yan Shikang. The overseeing eunuch was another Li eunuch, Li Ji's sworn brother, Lian. Yan Wei, now at the brink of collapse, cried out, "Brother, I really have confessed everything. I only turned a blind eye because I knew the Sue family wanted to use Lady He to frame Shen Lang, and I did it to avenge Miss Shueli. I really have no collusion with the Sue family." Hearing this, Yan Shikang bowed to Lian and said, "Eunuchly, it seems that Yan Wei is extremely stubborn. What do you think should be done next?" Lian didn't immediately respond, but instead looked at Yan Wei, pondering for a moment before speculating to himself. The third prince, the Marshal Peace Count's mansion, and the major supporter behind Blackwater platform, Yan Yi, all backed this scoundrel. He likely wouldn't collude with the Sue family. As long as it's confirmed whether the Sue family has infiltrated the Blackwater platform, that should suffice. Thinking this, Lian turned away with a look of disdain and said, "Since the interrogation is complete, I shall return to report to His Majesty. Handle the rest yourself." Yan Wei weakly lifted his head and asked, "Brother, Shen Lang has taken my concubine and children. Is there any news of them?" Yan Shikang didn't turn back but coldly said, "An hour ago, they were sent back home." Relieved to hear his family was unharmed, Yan Wei gave a bitter smile. "I know I won't live much longer. Brother, please remember our brotherhood and take care of my family." As he finished speaking, Yan Shikang approached with a wooden box, saying coldly, "Brother, you needn't worry anymore. The sovereign has already decreed the execution of your entire family." After saying this, he took a dagger from the box and continued, "The sovereign commanded that your skin be flayed and hung on the flagpole as a warning. Brother, I will make it quick. Just bear with it a little." As the dagger approached, Yan Wei's pupils dilated and his body trembled uncontrollably. Death was frightening enough, but the agony of being flayed was beyond despair. The next second, Yan Wei's agonizing and desperate scream echoed over the Blackwater platform. Meanwhile, Yan Wei's remaining family members, totaling 8, at the command, "Kill." Yan Wei's family of 23 was wiped out entirely. Simultaneously, inside distant Guard Marquis' residence, Suyong hurried back and informed Sunan of the sovereign's order to arrest Sue Jianting. Upon learning that the plan had failed, Sunan was utterly shocked. He had never anticipated Shen Lang's scheming to be so profound that his every move had been predicted. With a sigh, Sunan slumped into his chair and murmured, "This time, I was too hasty. Had I not acted, this young man would have found no fault with the Sue family. Now, Sue Jianting has been inexplicably accused of assaulting Lady He, and the curse on the crown prince and the attempt to instigate court factionalism are now seen as my conspiracies, Sunan's, beyond redemption. You cunning little beast, you really are formidable." He looked up into the distance, his gaze deep. "Chan country, Wu country, what should be my next move?" At this moment, Sunan was deep in thought. The arrangements in Wu country and Chu country were not yet complete, and the situation at court was becoming increasingly perilous. Nothing was ready. Must I be forced to act now? I cannot rush. Sunan muttered to himself, then his expression hardened as he pondered. Currently, with the support of Chong King behind me, Ning Yuanxian will only arrest Sue Jianting and will not act rashly. Otherwise, whether Chong troops enter Yu Kingdom to plunder or join the battle in southern Ouyang country, the outcome would be unbearable for Ning Yuanxian. Thinking this, Sunan seemed to regain his resolve, stood up abruptly, and sneered, "Shen Lang, prepare yourself and the Jin family for my fiercer onslaught. I will show you what a true powerhouse is, ensuring you and the Jin family perish without a trace." However, just then, a commotion erupted outside the mansion. Suddenly, numerous Blackwater platform guards stormed into the Marquis' residence, shouting loudly, "By the sovereign's command, arrest the heir of distant Guard Marquis' house, Sue Jianting. Anyone who interferes will be executed without mercy." Moments later, all All the servants of the distant guard Marquis's house were kneeling in the courtyard. However, despite a thorough search of the entire residence, Sue Jianting was nowhere to be found. The leader of the Blackwater Platform troops, leader of 10,000 households Yuanting, seemed unsurprised by this outcome. He thought to himself, Lord Sue's informants are scattered throughout the capital city. He must have received the news early and sent Sue Jianting away. Even so, when Yuanting saw Sunan, he still bowed respectfully and said, My lord, I come before you. Recently, the heir of the Marquis's house, Sue Jianting, led an attack on mythical Turtle Count's mansion, which greatly angered His Majesty. We are here by His Majesty's command to apprehend the heir, and we ask for your cooperation in surrendering him. Unexpectedly, Sunan then adopted an appearance of frail old age, slowly raising his head and said weakly, You want to arrest Sue Jianting? He's long left the capital city. However, a father must bear responsibility for his son's actions, so perhaps you should take me back to report. With that statement, Yuanting bowed even lower, yet dared not lay a hand on the old man. At that moment, Lian, unable to watch silently, stepped forward and said, Lord Sue, by the sovereign's decree, please come to the palace immediately. Sunan nodded and then, without making things difficult for Yuanting, allowed Lian to help him walk out of the mansion, leaning on his cane. Half an hour later, Sunan arrived at the sovereign's study. Upon entering, he immediately knelt down to confess his errors. The sovereign quickly helped him to his feet and then asked, I hear from the guards that Sue Jianting has left. Sunan didn't conceal the truth, replying, Chong King Ergang is celebrating his 49th birthday, and with my frail health, I couldn't attend, so I sent Sue Jianting in my place. The sovereign, smirking internally, thought, right after the autopsy of Lady He, your family got wind of it and sent Sue Jianting away. Such a guilty conscience. Surely you must have committed a grave crime, and sending him to Chong country. Sunan, are you trying to threaten me? Seeing the sovereign silent, Sunan spoke again. May I ask what crime my son has committed that has angered you so? The sovereign glanced at him, turned away, and said, Months ago, Sue Jianting led a night attack on mythical Turtle Count's mansion, attempting to kill his own aunt, Sue Peipei. Such a violation of human relations, I can no longer tolerate. To quell public opinion, I've ordered his capture to thoroughly investigate the matter. If he is guilty, he will be severely punished. If not, I will clear the Sue family's name. Sunan quickly defended, I've also investigated this matter. It was the bandit Kutuhuan who falsely used the Sue family's name to attack mythical Turtle Count's mansion. On that night, my son Sue Jianting was indeed not in the capital city, but in Western Celestial City. That evening, he was drinking and writing poetry with the son of the governor of Western Celestial Province, and many can testify on behalf of my son. As soon as he said this, Sovereign's anger surged. Damn old thief, threatening me again. You just mentioned Chong country, and now you're bringing up the governor of Western Celestial Province. Are you flaunting that your influence has permeated most of the military and government of Yu Kingdom? Sunan, unaware of the sovereign's inner fury, continued, Indeed, the accusation is completely unfounded, but my son did indeed commit some foolish acts. This too is due to my poor parenting. Please, your majesty, punish me. Sovereign's eyes turned cold, and he said sternly, The crime has not yet been confirmed. What punishment? Unexpectedly, Sunan replied directly, Anyway, if there is a crime, so be it. This response immediately fueled Sovereign's rage. What do you mean if there is a crime, so be it? Are you saying that I'm fabricating charges, deliberately framing the Sue family? Sovereign, struggling to contain his urge to kill, slowly closed his eyes to calm himself. He really can't touch this old thing now, but he must find a way to take down the Sue family soon, or they will surely rebel in the future. Thinking this, Sovereign suddenly laughed and waved his hand. Elder Sue takes this too seriously. Get up quickly. How could I arbitrarily punish you? Unexpectedly, Sunan did not get up but continued, Your Majesty, Zhang Chong was nearly killed in the Court of Judicial Review's prison, and the Court of Judicial Review has an undeniable responsibility. I think there should be some punishment. Sovereign was startled, his mind sneering, You Sunan, as a major minister of the Privy Council, do you also intend to extend your reach to the Court of Judicial Review? But outwardly, he went along with Sunan's suggestion. Elder Sue makes a good point. Then according to Elder Sue's opinion, how should we handle it? Sunan replied, White Knight County is my hometown, but after Prefect Chen Chi was taken down for corruption and bribery, the position has been vacant. Also, the position of the Lord of Distant Guard City has been vacant for a long time. I boldly recommend Court of Judicial Review's minor magistrate Wang Jingluan to take over as the prefect of White Knight County, and former 10,000 years county magistrate Wang Kaik to become the Lord of Distant Guard City. What do you think, Your Majesty? Hearing these recommendations, Sovereign trembled with anger. Sunan, this old thief, is clearly trying to test my limits wildly, but he still kept a smile on his face and said, To make Wang Jingluan the prefect of White Knight County would be a demotion, and although Wang Kaik was dismissed, being a former county magistrate of 10,000 years, and then taking a position as the Lord of Distant Guard City would be a demotion by 3 ranks. Since Elder Sue has made such recommendations, there must be your reasoning. I will think it over for a few days before making a decision. He paused, then slowly said, It's getting late. Someone, escort Elder Sue back to his estate. After Sunan had left, Sovereign's expression instantly turned cold. Li Ji, seeing this, immediately dismissed all the little eunuchs and then approached. Sovereign coldly looked at him and said, Li Ji, did you see? Always pretending to be a feeble old man in front of me. And now he finally couldn't restrain himself and showed his fangs. If the new policy hadn't been thwarted and had been pushed forward vigorously, I would have uprooted these old nobles long ago. He suddenly thought of Shen Lang and asked, did the 3 lashes I ordered for Shen Lang get delivered? I hope they didn't pad him with armor again this time. Li Ji thought for a moment and replied, Your Majesty, this time there was no armor padding, but rather, it was done over the body of Princess Ning Jen. Therefore, I did not dare to continue. Sovereign was shocked, immediately picturing Ning Jen shielding Shen Lang. What else was there to misunderstand? This was clearly his own cabbage being dug up by Shen Lang. The pig, furious and with a dark expression, Sovereign, accompanied by Li Ji, headed to the torture chamber. Upon seeing this, Ning Jen didn't wait for Sovereign to speak but knelt down immediately, urgently saying, Father, please calm your anger. All this was my doing. It has nothing to do with Shen Lang. It was that bastard Yun Mengza who drugged our wine. Shen Lang and I are both victims. Upon hearing this, Sovereign was internally speechless. Really, a grown daughter is hard to keep. You know I can't touch the Imperial Envoy, so you're desperately trying to pin the blame on Yun Mengza, right? Then, his gaze shifted to Shen Lang who, astonishingly, was bound to a chair yet sleeping soundly, infuriating him even more. You little rascal, even tied up like this, you can still sleep so soundly. It seems I've been too lenient with you. Seeing Sovereign's increasingly dark expression, Ning Jen quickly picked up a cup of water and splashed it on Shen Lang's face. Shen Lang immediately jolted awake, groggily feeling the immense pressure of Sovereign in front of him. Ah, young Master Shen, you're awake. At this moment, Sovereign coldly said, Shen Lang, now that you're awake, let's talk about your affair with Ning Jen. What do you plan to do? Realizing the extent of his and Ning Jen's exposure, Shen Lang blurted out in panic, Your Majesty, please calm your anger. I will no longer defile the 3rd princess. Let's pretend nothing ever happened. Upon hearing this, Sovereign's expression darkened even more, and he bellowed, Shen Lang, you little scoundrel, you've betted the princess of Yu Kingdom and you think you're at a loss? Growing more furious by the second, Sovereign shouted, Someone, throw Shen Lang into the dungeon, let him reflect deeply on his misdeeds. After Shen Lang was taken away, Ning Jen panicked, quickly approaching Sovereign to plead on his behalf. Father, Shen Lang really did nothing wrong. It was all my initiative. Please don't punish him. Hearing Ning Jen's plea, Sovereign became even angrier and turned around to yell, Shen Lang is the son-in-law of the Marquis of Mythical Turtle, and you're already married. Have you thought about the consequences if your indiscretion were to be made public? Ning Jen guiltily lowered her head, murmuring quietly, it was just an accident with him. As long as that scoundrel Yun Mengza doesn't spread it around, no one else will know. Hearing his naive daughter's words, Sovereign massaged his forehead in frustration and helplessly said, You shouldn't stay in Capital City anymore. Return to your husband's home in Flame Emperor country as soon as possible. Hearing this, tears immediately welled up in Ning Jen's eyes. No, I'll die before I go back. Do you think I've embarrassed you in Capital City, right? But sending me back to Flame Emperor country to spend every day next to a husband who doesn't like women, won't that be embarrassing too? Are you really so heartless as to give up on me? Seeing Ning Jen's aggrieved expression, Sovereign felt utterly vexed. With Sunan's rebellion looming and now this scandal with his own daughter, he was too distressed to scold her or to take any action. Truly a headache. What a mess. A while later, back in his study, although Sovereign was displeased with Ning Jen's actions, Sunan's defiance posed an even greater problem. Since the Su family couldn't be eradicated for now, he must first weaken Sunan's influence in court and strip away his allies to stop him from stirring further trouble. After some thought, he picked up a pen to write a secret letter and summon Li Ji. Take this letter to the Grand Judge Wang Qingchang and tell him to make good use of his eloquence in court tomorrow. Do not disappoint me. The next day at the court assembly, after the ministers paid their respects to Sovereign, a sudden silence fell across the hall, as if everyone tacitly awaited the first to ignite the proceedings. Wang Qingchang, having received Sovereign's directive the previous night, immediately understood the royal intention. That very night, he drafted an impeachment memorial against Sunan, knowing full well the vast power Sunan wielded, and how no minor official in the imperial censorate dared to impeach him for his misdemeanors like unauthorized expansion of territory and encroachment on peasant lands. Wang Qingchang was different. With the backing of the Sovereign, he had the confidence and justification to proceed. However, just as he was about to present his memorial, Censor Lin Bing Jong unexpectedly stood up and declared, Your Majesty, I have a memorial. This action stunned Wang Qingchang. What's going on? How can this man present his memorial without my consent? Is he the traitor within the imperial censorate? This sudden turn of events also caused Sovereign's expression to darken as he glared fiercely at Lin Bing Jong. Then, Sovereign shifted his gaze away and signaled Lin Bing Jong to proceed. Seeing this, Wang Qingchang's forehead broke out in cold sweat. This is bad. The emperor must think I am incompetent and angered by this mess. Lin Bing Jong, ignoring Wang Qingchang's desperate looks, spoke up. Your Majesty, I wish to impeach the Marquis of Mythical Turtle, Shen Lang. This man has behaved inappropriately, seducing the 3rd princess Ning Jen and tarnishing the reputation of the Yu Kingdom royal family. If this gets out, it could even anger the Prince of the Empire. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole assembly was shocked, and everyone looked at Lin Bing Jong with disbelief. Suddenly, the hall buzzed with whispers. Unbelievable that a palace censor would dare to expose royal scandals in such a bold manner. He must have a death wish. Wang Qingchang was also dumbfounded. Very few knew of Shen Lang's private affairs with Princess Ning Jen, and now Lin Bing Jong had publicly exposed this in front of all the court officials. What was his intention? An official of merely 6th rank dares to expose such a scandal. This is undoubtedly shielding Sunan. What has this old thief offered Lin Bing Jong to make him unafraid of death? Li Ji, standing nearby, also sweated for Shen Lang. His Majesty had already decided to handle this matter privately, planning to send Ning Jen back to the Flame Emperor's country and shut Shen Lang away for a few days as a lesson. But now that it's public, Shen Lang's charges are much more severe. If the Prince of the Flame Emperor's country gets outraged by this, His Majesty might not be able to protect this young man. Just when the situation seemed uncontrollable, Zhang Chong suddenly stood up and shouted accusingly at Lin Bing Jong. Audacious official, how dare you slander the princess's purity without evidence? I implore His Majesty to order the arrest of this man, to investigate thoroughly who is behind him and uncover any plots. Lin Bing Jong quickly retorted, I have evidence. A few days ago, the third princess and Shen Lang spent a night together at the residence of Ambassador Yun Mengza. That day, Shen Lang was seen leaving the mansion disheveled. Furthermore, when Shen Lang was detained at the Court of Judicial Review, Princess Ning Jen led troops to storm the jail. This act alone proves there is an unspeakable relationship between them. If we do not severely punish Shen Lang, where is the royal dignity? If royals break the law, they must be judged as commoners. If Princess Ning Jen is not punished, then what is the law worth? After these words, the hall fell into stunned silence. At that moment, Wang Qingchang felt as if his career was over. Lin Bing Jong is from my imperial censorate. Now that it's come to this, I'm probably finished. Meanwhile, standing behind Wang Qingchang, Sunan could barely conceal his delight, a smirk appearing on his lips. The real show has just begun. These successive surprises made it impossible for Sovereign to contain his fury any longer. Just as he was about to explode, Zhang Chong spoke again. Your Majesty, during the trial of Shen Lang, I was there supervising and can testify that Princess Ning Jen did not storm the Court of Judicial Review. The truth is, upon hearing of Shen Lang's transfer to the Court of Judicial Review, she led her retainers there to help maintain order. The so-called attack on the Court of Judicial Review is completely fabricated. Moreover, at that time, Ambassador Yun Mengza and many guards from the Blackwater platform were present and can vouch for Princess Ning Jen. Upon hearing this, Sovereign inwardly breathed a sigh of relief and then gave Zhang Chong an approving look before sternly declaring, regardless, Ning Jen, as a princess of the royal family, should not have acted on her own. This matter must be severely punished. Grand Director Ning Yu, Emperor's uncle, take command and confine third Princess Ning Jen to the Clan Affairs Court to reflect on her actions. She may only leave the temple after 1 month. Having spoken, Sovereign turned his gaze toward Lin Bing Jong and coldly asked, Imperial Censor Lin, are you satisfied with this resolution? However, this threatening question did not deter Lin Bing Jong. He again stepped forward and declared, Your Majesty, the matter of Shen Lang defiling the third princess touches on the dignity of the Yu Kingdom royal family. I still urge Your Majesty to thoroughly investigate this matter. Sovereign suppressed the anger in his heart and said sternly, This matter will be investigated thoroughly as well. He couldn't believe that even after taking such steps, someone would still shield Sunan. Just as the situation seemed temporarily settled, Wang Qingchang had just calmed his emotions and was preparing to seize the opportunity to continue his presentation when suddenly, urgent news of battle was heard from outside. Your Majesty, 30,000 troops from Wu have marched south and are now pressing towards Weno City. Startled, Sovereign urgently inquired, What does the King of Wu mean by this? Is he testing us, or does he intend to wage war? But given that Wu is still in a period of weakness, how dare he send troops now? Suddenly, it seemed to dawn on Sovereign, and he stared directly at Sunan. Is all this another of this old rogue's tactics to threaten me? If so, it's truly frightening. With the battle situation in southern Ouyang country at a stalemate and the Chang nation growing restless, and now with Wu's troops moving south, Sovereign realized that it was essential to stabilize the nation's mood and avoid any disturbances. With this in mind, he suppressed his anger and humiliation, and suddenly laughed loudly. The King of Wu is but a wet behind the ears youngster eager to show his fangs. If he wants war, then I will not shy away. With the Northern Guard's Grand General, handling this minor state of Wu is more than manageable. Then, turning to Sunan, his tone softened slightly. Elder Su, you are the Vice Minister of the Privy Council. Tell me, how should we respond to this situation? Internally, Sunan sneered. Ning Yuanxian, do you think a few pretty words can easily free you? I, Sunan, will make you realize what it means to be completely surrounded and helpless. Not only will you pay a steep price, but I will use this opportunity to completely eradicate the Jin family. Following that, Sunan smiled slightly and responded, Your Majesty's wisdom is unparalleled. Please make the decision yourself. At that moment, in the palace dungeon, taking advantage of the time Sovereign was holding court, Ning Yen had someone bring good wine and went down to the dungeon to drink with Shen Lang. Midway through their drinking session, Shen Lang, holding his wine cup, irritably inquired, "Tigress, why is this wine red? And why does it make one feel so heated after drinking?" Ning Jen, slightly tipsy, laughed and said, "Brother, I was afraid you'd freeze to death in this chilly dungeon, so I specially brought you this fine deer blood wine to warm you up, perhaps due to the alcohol's effects." Shen Lang's brain didn't immediately register the special effects of deer blood wine, and he continued to drink. However, when he put down his cup and looked at Ning Jen, for some reason, he found her unusually enchanting. At that moment, Ning Jen noticed Shen Lang's peculiar gaze and warned with a guarded expression, "Don't forget what we said before. That day was the first and last time for us. We are nothing more than clean siblings. You better not have any more improper thoughts." Shen Lang chuckled lightly and said, "Don't worry, I, Shen Lang, am a man of integrity, and I won't do anything to betray my dear Mulan again." Upon hearing this, the oblivious Ning Jen let down her guard. So, the two resumed their drinking and singing. As you can imagine, the outcome of a night spent drinking between a man and a woman alone in a room goes without saying. The next morning, with a groggy head, Ning Jen woke from her hangover. When she saw Shen Lang next to her heart sank halfway. "How did I end up in bed with this scum again?" As she fretted, she suddenly noticed something. Where did this blanket covering them come from? Of course, with her intelligence, she couldn't immediately figure out that it was Li Ji who had instructed the maids to cover them. The previous night, Li Ji had been ordered to check on Shen Lang, but unexpectedly heard the sounds of Ning Jen and Shen Lang being intimate. Those sounds are too naive, especially Ning Yen's moans. You just can't help but listen. Li Ji thought ruefully, only able to have someone cover them with a blanket before hurriedly leaving. At this moment, Ning Jen looked in horror at the sleeping Shen Lang next to her. No matter who had covered them with the blanket, their current state of undress could cause a huge scandal if it reached her father's ears. Just as Ning Jen was at a loss, the dungeon door suddenly opened. Startled, Ning Jen dove back under the blanket. Grand Director Ning Yu, Emperor's uncle, stood solemnly at the door while a small eunuch spoke up. "Shen Lang, the Grand Director is here to interrogate you. Wake up at once." Startled awake, Shen Lang turned over lazily, waving his hand nonchalantly to indicate they could ask their questions. The eunuch cleared his throat and asked, "His Majesty commands you to confess truthfully. Do you and Princess Ning Yen have an improper relationship?" Hearing this, Shen Lang sat up and declared, "Princess Ning Yen and I are just good siblings. Don't believe the rumors outside. And I am a devoted man. I would never do anything to betray my wife." Ning Yu, Emperor's uncle, squinted his eyes and sternly asked, "Can anyone corroborate what you're saying?" Just as Shen Lang was about to speak, Ning Yen suddenly popped out from under the blanket and shouted, "I can testify. There's nothing between Shen Lang and me." Her appearance instantly dumbfounded Shen Lang, and even Ning Yu and the small eunuch were shocked. "In this state, you say there's nothing between you? Do you even believe that yourself?" However, Ning Yu understood the principle that royal scandals must not be publicized. He quickly composed himself and continued, "Ning Yen, do you have sufficient reasons to prove you and Shen Lang are innocent?" Wrapped in a blanket, Ning Yen nodded and replied, "Yes, we're just clean and pure siblings." Hearing this, Ning Yu's eyelids twitched violently. He then told the small eunuch, "Record this. Shen Lang and Princess Ning Yan's relationship is innocent. The alleged affair is completely unfounded. End of investigation." The eunuch clenched his teeth and carefully recorded, "For the sake of my bright future, let's pretend I saw and heard nothing today." After everything was documented, Ning Yen was taken to the clan affairs court to be confined for a month. Meanwhile, the unfortunate Shen Lang was kept in the dungeon. He couldn't help but wail internally, "I am really wronged. It was Ning Yen who ran to get him drunk, so why should all the unprovoked disasters fall on Shen Lang?" Meanwhile, in the royal study, Li Ji had reported the entire matter to Sovereign. Although Sovereign's face looked unpleasant when he heard that Shen Lang and Ning Yen were together again, he was no longer as furious as before. "Go, send a message to Jinhua and ask him how he educates his son-in-law. Also, stop sending food to Shen Lang. Let him starve a bit as a punishment." Of course, Sovereign wasn't really less angry, but he felt that compared to the King of Wu leading a 30,000-strong army southward, Shen Lang and Ning Yan's consensual private matters could be slightly punished for now. After all, he still needed Shen Lang to strategize for him later. But now, Sovereign was more concerned about why the King of Wu would suddenly lead troops southward, and Sunan. All current events seem to hint that this mastermind is Sunan. Is he really preparing to rebel? Cut to the Chong King's palace. At that moment, the 49th birthday feast of Chong King Irrigang was underway, with envoys from the western regions, southern Ouyang, and the Sand Barbarian tribe bringing precious gifts. Even the Chu Kingdom's envoy, unprecedentedly, appeared publicly at Chong King's feast. At that moment, Chong King laughed and said, "Now that the smallpox epidemic in my Chong country has been completely eradicated, it's time for me, Irrigang, to wreak havoc." Chong King said with a sneer, "Ning Yuanxian, the king of you, dared to make me write a letter of confession, trampling on my dignity, killing my Chong warriors, and undermining my military might. This time, I will make him understand what it means to prefer death over life." He banged the table, the sound echoing throughout the hall. "This time, not only will I invade Western Celestial Province and seize his land, but I will also kill thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, of people from your kingdom to mourn for my fallen warriors." At that moment, Sue Jianting raised his glass glass and stood up to toast. Great King, don't forget, there's still a small matter to settle, killing Shen Lang. Chong King glanced at him disdainfully and coldly said, don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I will make you king personally chop off that bastard's head and present it to me. Although he saved the entire Chong country, I, Ergang, only know revenge, not gratitude. Now that the epidemic has stopped, it's time for Shen Lang to die. However, Shen Lang, far away in Yu Kingdom, was not worried at all. After all, when he was treating Chong King for smallpox, he had already implanted numerous poison beads in his body. Whenever Chong King uses his inner strength, those poison beads will burst, and then he will have only death awaiting him. At that moment, Chong Queen Suemo suddenly asked, Great King, today is your birthday feast. Why hasn't Princess Arun attended? Hearing this name, Chong King instantly became furious. After Shen Lang and his party left, Princess Arun had established a new tribe at the foot of the snow-capped mountains, specially providing free smallpox vaccinations for the poor people of Chong country. Such an act naturally enraged Chong King. After all, he charges a significant amount as compensation for vaccinating the Chong people once, and Arun's actions were clearly against him. Then, Crown Prince Arutai suddenly stood up and said, Father, when Arunana left, she said that during her time with smallpox, her family abandoned her. Thus, she swore she would no longer recognize you as her father or me as her brother. Not only that, but her tribe has now grown to over 100,000 people. Chong King was shocked when he heard this number. His entire Chong country only had a few 100,000 people, and this defiant daughter had developed so rapidly. Does she not know that the future of Chong country is meant for Arutai? Could a woman be aspiring to seize the crown prince's throne? Thinking of this, he was burning with rage. He downed the wine in his cup in one gulp, then stood up and walked to the palace's livestock yard, where he found an extremely robust bison. Amidst the bison's pitiful cries, Chong King easily broke off one of its horns. He handed the bloody horn to the fifth prince, Arun, and said coldly, Take this horn and tell Arunana to come and kneel before me to apologize within 10 days. If she stubbornly refuses to return, I will use this horn to kill her. Her life was given by me, and naturally, it can also be taken away by me. After temporarily resolving these unpleasant matters, Chong King returned to the feast. He suddenly asked, Chu Envoy, this time I plan to personally lead troops into Yu Kingdom. How much money have you prepared for me? The Chu Envoy was taken aback, then replied, We have prepared 200,000 gold coins. Chong King shook his head disdainfully. Your Chu King is too stingy. Look at Sunan, how generous he is. Learn from him. The Chu Envoy furrowed his brow and couldn't help but say, Chong King, you can't say that. We are not only offering money, but also military support. The Yu Kingdom border is amassing hundreds of thousands of troops. If you directly invade the west to plunder, Marquis Zhong Yao of the West Guard will surely come to intercept. How will you handle that then? Chong King lifted his wine cup disdainfully and took a sip. What's there to fear from Zhong Yao? He's just a coward. But listen well, I want 300,000 gold coins, not one less. Otherwise, I won't send troops. The Chu Envoy had no choice but to nod in agreement. Satisfied with the answer, Chong King excitedly pulled the young Queen Su Ning beside him. Suddenly, he turned to Sue Jianting and asked, I heard that Shen Lang's wife is very beautiful. Is that right? Sue Jianting nodded and replied, Yes. Jean Mulan's beauty is no less than that of the divine woman Xuan. Even the Yu Kingdom crown prince is hopelessly infatuated with her. Hearing this, Chong King became even more excited and laughed loudly. The most thrilling pleasure in life is to chop off an enemy's head and trample their dignity. I want not only to take Shen Lang's woman for myself, but also to make those so-called civilized people of Yu Kingdom watch as their wives and daughters are trampled to death by my Chong soldiers. Let them forever wallow in endless agony. The others looked at each other, then raised their cups of wine and chorused, Here's to the great king's victory in advance.